Welcome!
Happy Sunday.
Yeah, is anybody else excited? This is the first time Lindsay and I have done a live together since we were running Hug Your Chaos, our coaching company.
Those of you that have been around for a while will have maybe missed us being live together, maybe not, but either way, you guys, if you're catching this as the replay, let us know, throw a hashtag replay, let us know you were here. And for those of you that are now beginning to tune on live, say hello, let us know that you're here. Let us know that you're seeing us.
Hello.
Hi, Lauren.
Welcome. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes. It's not quite 6 o'clock yet. And we just want to give people the chance to start rolling on in. You know, we've been talking about this live all day today.
Yeah, this started this morning with a conversation over coffee. And then we realized...
And I was like, snap, this needs to be told to the world. Yeah. You know, it's just... This is some straight up wisdom that has come through. You know, we were talking this morning over coffee, like Lindsay said, and straight up this it just came down. And
I'm just sharing it.
Definitely want to let you all know that this is going to trigger the shit out of many of you.
It may.
Everybody has an opinion on what's happening in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if there's this giant rift starting to occur. There's this rift that's happening between people that, there's multiple rifts. It's almost like there's people that don't even believe the virus is real and it's just propaganda machine. And there's people that are so caught up in the fear of this killer virus that's going to destroy
Watch
them.
the language though, so we don't get shadow banned.
Okay.
The V. We're going to call it the V.
The V.
Because believe what you want, y'all, certain words get shadow banned, which means people then don't get to see and consume the content around it.
All right, cool.
So the CV.
All right, so everybody has an opinion is basically where I'm at with this. Everybody has this idea of what's currently unfolding on the planet. And before we get into the meat of this live, one of the things I wanted to share is that truth, small t, is subjective. Like, everybody has an understanding of their truth, and it's their truth.
Like, subjective truth is blue is the best color in the world. That's my subjective truth.
Right. Now, here's the big picture of that. The rainbow is the best color in the world.
Right.
And that is truth with a capital T.
Because all colors.
When you're only able to see it from a very limited viewpoint of personal perspective, you see that blue is the best color in the world. Small t, that's your truth. Right? It's not wrong, it's not incorrect. It just means that it's a small, limited viewpoint of the truth.
And what's currently happening in the world is that there's a lot of people arguing over their lowercase personal truths, demanding that the other people in their lives agree with their subjective personal truths. Now, can anybody tell me why I have to approve and agree with your personal truth? Like, why is that a thing for people, right? We want to trigger some thoughts here. We want to trigger some conversation around this. Because we all do it. Like, it's just part of being human, right? Like, if I love apples and Chris is my husband and he hates apples, I guarantee you at some point in our relationship, I'm probably going to try to convince him why he needs apples in his life, right?
But
it should be shareable, Ash. I think it's public. Did you not have it on public?
Yeah, it's...
I shared it, so it should be shareable. Yeah, you should be able to share it. Thank you for that.
Hang on.
He's making sure.
Yeah.
Right? But so, and we can all look at less charged. Like, let's start out looking at some less charged points of view, like apples, right? Or Doritos, or why, whatever it is. And we do that, right? We do that with our friends because we think something is really great or awesome or freeing or empowering. We want everybody to have that experience. But now, if Bandit agrees too, I don't know if you guys heard that. If Chris, in the course of our relationship, is like, you know what, I'm just not going to eat apples, and no matter what you tell me about apples, I don't want them. Am I going to divorce him? Am I going to unfriend him? Am I going to block him off my Facebook and leave him? I mean, maybe, the way some people be acting these days, maybe. Because what we want you all to understand and start kind of seed planting around and gnawing on in your thought processes is that the stuff we see being argued about is equivalent to, do you like apples or don't you like apples? It's irrelevant to the bigger picture.
And here's the reality, straight up. To unfollow and unfriend and not talk to somebody anymore because they don't agree with your viewpoint is childish. It is a childish way of approaching the world. It is immature. And I'm not saying that to call names. I'm not saying childish like you're being a child, grow up. I'm saying it's childish and immature. It is a very limited way of interacting with the world. We are allowed to have contrary opinions and still be friends.
Side note, interjection. That's not to say that when someone is legitimately abusive or toxic or treating us in a way that doesn't expand and uplift us, I'm not saying we don't, right? Like, this isn't a blanket statement. I just want to clarify, it's not a blanket statement that sometimes gets misconstrued as, oh, so I should just let everybody in my life who walks all over me or treats me like shit or spews hate everywhere. That's not what we're saying, right? It's not so black and white as that. Like, you get to choose and establish the parameters of who the people are in your life and how they treat you. So that's not to say that people that are abusive or toxic or full of just hate and stuff like that you should keep in your field. That's not what we're saying. Right. However, if someone you know is a pretty damn decent person, but they happen to have opposite political beliefs than you, is that really cause to block them? Like, what if instead of just being like, okay, I'm not even going to stop to think about why I think you're a decent person, but you happen to vote for Trump. Like, let's go there, right? Let's just go there. Because
and then we're going to get into it.
To make a statement like every single person that supports the politics of DT is a horrible bigot or a-hole or ignorant, like, that's absolutes, right? And absolutes just don't serve us. They don't serve us. So instead of making those blanket statements so that we can just remove anything that makes us uncomfortable, what if we sought to understand why this person I think is amazing, why do they have such opposing political beliefs than me? Why? What if I got curious about why? And I listened with my heart, not with my righteous filter on, about why they had those beliefs. Do you guys know the connection and compassion that can come from that? Bandit agrees too. As you can see, he's had to insert himself into the camera.
All right, guys, let's take it up a notch. Let's go from apples to what we're here to talk about.
Death.
Death, very taboo, very, very taboo subject. And dimensional shifting and you. This is really exciting. And this is what we were talking about this morning. This is the very purpose of this life.
This is what we talk about over coffee in this house.
Can I say, we're wizards.
Hey, Barb.
Oh, would you just give him the bone? There.
So, side note, Luna, the corgi, has the bone in front of her, and Bandit, the pit bull, wanted the bone. And instead of taking the bone, he was whining about it. He's such a baby.
Let's talk about death, dimensional shifting, and you. Currently, regardless of which side of the fence you sit on, there is this big global V killing people, right? Whether you see it as real, manufactured, it doesn't matter. Like, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. That's landscape. There is this big V on the planet right now, and it is taking lives all over the world, right? And something that is super important to understand is layer that what...
She said, you're trying to shake up my root chakra ideal. Well, I gotta come for you.
Something to understand in connection or conjunction with that, right, is that the Earth and the beings that exist on Earth right now are in the process of a dimensional shift.
Upgrades, evolution, ascension, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter.
You, me, Lindsay,
Bandit,
and every single other person here,
the plants, the trees,
we're all born into a third dimensional world. Three-dimensional space-time, physicality, whatever you want to call it. Right? We were all born into that world. We were born with physical, three-dimensional bodies.
And the third dimension is ruled by the mind and the intellect and the ego. And this is the world we can do we all agree on that? Like, let's get a yes. If everybody agrees with the idea of third-dimensional consciousness, third-dimensional reality, we're physical, we can touch, we can interact, we're ruled by the mind. Give me a yes if you all agree with that.
Individual egoic self, right? That's the rule of third-dimensional space-time. physicality. That's what we were all born into.
Duality.
Now, this is really beautiful. This has just literally come through, like just right now. As above, so below. You've heard that saying. It's an old Hermetic alchemist saying. Many of us, especially Gen Xers, I'm not going to speak for millennials right now, but many of us Gen Xers and the boomers that are still here, I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. Many of us were born into an analog world, and we saw the transition to digital.
Especially us Gen Xers. We are the analog digital generation, right?
So there was this, we were born into one world, and we saw the world shift, and we had to make a transition, a world transition. Now, we didn't have to do too much. It just kind of happened around us, and now we live in a digital world, right? As above, so below. The same thing is happening galactically right now.
Yeah.
It's happening here on Earth. We were born into a three-dimensional physical world, and it's now upgrading via the fourth-dimensional pathways, the bridge into a 5D world. It's becoming fifth-dimensional.
What does that mean?
What does it mean?
What does fifth dimensional mean? I mean, it all sounds, 5D, but what does that mean? Like, what does it take? And this doesn't mean that, like, we're going to not be physical beings anymore, right? That's the brilliance about this evolution. This evolution is 5D consciousness anchoring into a physical level, a physical dimension. Again, that all sounds well and good and really airy-fairy and new agey and fun and new earth, whoop, 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 and 5D. But, like, has anyone stopped to think about what it actually takes for physical bodies that have been cellularly programmed with third-dimensional bullshit and density to upgrade to hold 5D consciousness?
Yeah, now I'm not going to lie to you.
It's a big shift.
Over the past month, I have connected with my truth. I've done enough work that it kind of dropped the shrouds from my eyes, and I'm now able to completely see who I am and where I've come from. I'm not going to get into that on this live, it's irrelevant, but the fact of the matter is, I can tell you that dimensional shifting from a physical reality is something that I have done countless times throughout my incarnations in various lives. It's something I have a lot of experience in. That's one of the reasons why I am here. I'm sure a lot of you connect with that within your own selves as well. You've done it before, it's why you're here. Particularly light workers, you star seeds, those that vibrate or align with that particular thought, for want of a better word, you will also connect with the idea that you have done this before. You've experienced this before.
Anyone feeling that? Throw up a heart or a yes if you're feeling that. Like, okay, I incarnated for this, or I've been here before, or this isn't my first rodeo. Anybody?
Now, having said that, entering a world as a third-dimensional being, and then physicality, entering the world as a third-dimensional physical being, and making a dimensional shift between 3, 4, and 5D in physicality, with a physical body, with a mind, with emotions, with physical energy, is one of the most challenging undertakings the universe can do. It's one of the most delicate operations that can happen.
And it doesn't happen like that. It's a process, and it's not, oh, I went from angry to love and light the way that, some bypassers would like it to believe, right? It's not what that's about, right? There is this has to happen on your physical layer, your mental layer, your emotional layer, your energy layer. Like, the upgrades are coming in, and that means, guess what, you guys, we have to purge shit that has been stored in our DNA and our cells like 7 generations back. We're not just purging for ourselves so we can hold 5D consciousness. We're purging for our ancestors. We're purging all the emotional bullshit that we've locked away in our subconscious that we haven't, wanted to deal with, and that we've pushed away and shoved down. Like, this happens in layers, and it happens in waves.
Now, at the start of this live, we were talking how...
Yeah, Lauren.
When you say blue is the best color, you're an individual perspective of a spectrum, of a rainbow, right? You're viewing it from a limited perspective. You, as a point of consciousness, are a pinpoint in space-time. That's what you are. That's what we all are. You're a pinpoint. That pinpoint is penetrating through multiple generations to be here in this spot right now. So when Lindsay's saying that you have the work to clear multiple generations, because your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents, they were not here to experience this shift. You are. And in having said that, you have to do the work for all of them, because they're all existing in the same time. Time is an illusion, right? It's all happening right now. You are the pinpoint of that consciousness of your entire line all the way back. And right now is the work needed to clear that density so that you can experience the bridge and the transition to a higher dimensional frequency. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm. Absolute fact. And like, we exist. Does everybody agree that we exist beyond our bodies? Or does anybody here think that they're just a body and there's nothing more to you? Like, you're just a physical animated body and there's no higher intelligence or energy or frequency or layers to you, that like the body just dies? And this will kind of start to transition us into some of the death conversation, right? Because like, I am seeing what I perceive sometimes as an almost irrational hysteria around death and people dying, right? Now, I'm not an asshole. Like, I understand we're human beings, and when we lose somebody that we love, it's sad. Like, that's part of, I understand that. Hey, I really enjoy you here in physicality, so when you move on, I'm gonna miss you. But I also,
shit, when my favorite character dies in a TV series, I
cry. Me too, right? I know.
Come on.
I know. So I'm not saying, right, it's not like this rigid argument that's like, okay, it's not sad and we don't get to grieve and we don't get to miss them. But I also am so firmly grounded into the truth, capital T truth, that we exist beyond here. And that right now, there are people and beings that made a choice and a decision about their life path a long time ago that knew that they weren't coming here to stay here beyond the evolution of Earth. Like, their work may be done, their path may be done. And I'm sorry, like this, I don't know how this will get taken, but to me it seems like for me to sit on my ass down here in physicality and get righteous and hysterical about people living in accordance to their sovereign path of choosing when they die, who the fuck am I to decide when somebody lives or dies? I'm not BG who wants to play God. We all know who BG is wanting to play God right now, right? Like, I'm not here to play God. I know that. And I really, truly believe that we incarnate here to have certain experiences, and oftentimes from our limited human perspective, we cannot even begin to wrap our mind around why someone would choose to incarnate and have an experience for 5 years and pass on, or why they would choose to go out in a horrific way. We just don't know, right? And when we try to make and call the shots and make the decisions about what's right for everybody based on our limited human perspective, well, don't you all think that's a little bit righteous? Like, if you pause for a minute and think about the fact that on a soul level, you chose a path, okay? And here you are, and you're walking your path, and you're doing your thing, and I swoop in and I say, guess what? I know what's better for you on your path. How are you all going to take that? Do you want me swooping in and telling you that I know what's better than your soul for your path? Down to what you should be doing and when you need to live and when you need to die? I'm just saying, like, can you guys see like where I'm going with that?
All right, so let's backtrack a little bit now. Let's talk.
I love you, Ash.
Let's talk about what's happening for you, because that's part of this death, dimensional shifting in you.
I'll tell you later. I don't want to say his name.
Let's talk about. Let's talk about you and what you are experiencing right now, just to help broaden the landscape here a little bit. Throw up in the comments what you've been experiencing in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Headaches? Check. surreal
aches
and pains, yeah, all the physical symptoms, right?
The fabric of reality unraveling right before your
Feeling
eyes.
very surreal. Like I've heard people say they feel like they're in a movie. I've heard people say they feel like they're in a dream.
Is anybody else having every single paradigm they have challenged? Yes, it's me. Hi, Mike. It's really me.
And so there's so many things that you're probably experiencing right now, and I want to wait a second for the chat to catch up, because I really want you guys to throw out there some of the things that you're experiencing.
Roller coasters of emotions, headaches. A lot of people with headaches.
Lack of sleep. Yeah, headaches.
You guys.
Totally. There's so many things that are happening at the moment, right? Do you feel in any way, shape or form like your sanity's kind of wavering in and out? Do you feel like you're having trouble staying grounded and centered? Do you feel like your meaning in life has just been turned upside down like an hourglass and now shit's flying everywhere? Do you feel like
ego death?
Do you feel a little bit like you're treading water in a stormy ocean at night and you don't know what's air and what's water, and it's dark and it's scary and it's a meat grinder?
Everything you thought mattered just fucking doesn't, and it's like, okay, by the way, accept it. You feel a little bit like, if anybody's done any plant medicines, when you're plunging down the tunnel of, guess what? You're really not in charge, and everything you thought was real isn't.
When you're throwing up into the ayahuasca bucket and the shikana opens up inside the bucket and you fall into it like Alice down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, fatigue.
Is that what you're experiencing right now?
Anybody else feeling like a little bit like the Matrix?
I'm going to say something right now. Every single one of you that is watching this is woke.
Totally.
If you're watching this live, even if you're not here live with us and you're watching this as the replay and you stumbled across it and you're still here after everything we've spoken about, you've woken up. Mm-hmm. You're here to stay through the shift. I could guarantee that.
And just side note, Ash, good point, right? Can I say that this started a few months beforehand? Yes, because y'all, this isn't something that like just happened out of nowhere. There is a much bigger picture playing out with all this. This isn't an accident. This didn't accidentally happen. It's all been in the cards, right? And we've been moving towards this moment for the past years with upgrades and shifts. And I believe every single one of you that has coached with me on some capacity was preparing you for what is happening right now.
Let's briefly lay that analogy that I used earlier over this again. When we went from analog to digital, when we started upgrading the cell phone towers, and we were on the analog network with the old...
When we went from Atari to Nintendo?
Yeah, we had those old phones where the thing flipped out and we put the aerial up and we'd be like, hello, and it was an analog world. When they started rolling out digital, right, it took over 12 months for that transition to take place. And there was a grace period where they allowed people to still be operating on the analog network, and they started blending the networks, and then they started removing the analog network. The same thing is happening here. The Earth isn't just going to be like, bing, good morning, we're now 5G, because we would all implode. Something bad would happen.
Think about like cable, right? Do you guys remember? Come on, we're going to date ourselves here. Does anybody remember actually having a TV that had an antenna on it, or like a dial? And then slowly but surely it got to the point where you had to have a cable box. Right? Internet, right? Do you guys remember when internet was a thing and you plugged it into the computer and it would be like and then God forbid you were trying to log on to AOL and you got a busy signal? No, right? That's what we didn't just go from no computers in the house to handheld devices that can be, access Wi-Fi through the air. Like that didn't happen overnight. This has been a steady process over the last 20 years, right? And now it's like you can just and oh look, I'm on Wi-Fi and I have everything I need right here, and I'm plugged into the galactic internet through my brain.
So it's the same thing with this dimensional shift that we're experiencing on the planet at the moment. It's been happening for the past 20 years, and it's going to keep happening until the analog has been cut away and there is literally just the digital remaining. right? So here's where we tie this together. Death, the big V that's ravaging people's lives all over the planet at the moment.
And BG wanting to play God.
The big CV that's happening all around the place at the moment. You know, we're not...
Oh, no.
It's Corona time. You know, I understand that it's tragic what has happened. I'm not an asshole. I understand. We understand that it's tragic what has happened around the place. A lot of people have lost their lives. In the bigger galactic sense, whether they chose to experience that at this time or not is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, you guys watching this live are all incredibly awakened within yourselves in one degree or another. You have all at some point come to an understanding of who you are. You've connected with yourself as a light worker. You've connected with yourself as a guide to humanity, as a tip of the spear. You are awake to a certain degree, right?
Otherwise you wouldn't be watching this.
And if you are experiencing everything that you've just listed as part of this shift, and it hasn't even really warmed up yet, let's get real.
Like the next 4 years are going to be transitory? Transitional?
The pot on the stove right now is jacuzzi level. We're not even boiling yet. And if this is what we're experiencing, so there's many people on Earth that are not capable of making the transition from a physical 3-dimensional body through the 4D gateway into 5D. It's just they're not at that stage. And that's not speaking poorly of them. That's just saying that they are at a different stage of their journey. And it's time for them to go, leave this place, and maybe they've decided to assist from the other side in non-physicality. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have decided that they want to continue experiencing 3-dimensional physical life. They still want to chase the Ferraris. They still want to acquire the house. They still want to become a rock star. Whatever it is that, you know, is appealing to them in 3-dimensional space-time, that's what they still want to chase. So they've left this world, which is making a serious transition, because they know they haven't progressed to that part of the journey yet where they're able to survive that transition. Does that make sense? Say yes if that makes sense to you.
And what we all really need to remember is that everything that's happening, while everything that's happening right now is a collective shift and a collective journey, at the same time, it's also very much individual. And there is not one of us who can say what's right or wrong for another, right? There's not one of us that can make the choices for somebody else. And in a world that's been, you know, where love, the idea of love has been very distorted into, you know, codependency and need, we get really confused about, you know, the idea of needing to save other people or claiming that we know what's best for them. I'm not saying we do this consciously, but there's like very unconscious processes that we play out where, you know, we're trying to save other people, or we're thinking that we know best for other people, or because we think we love them or we want what's best for them, we try to impose our beliefs on them, which takes away their sovereignty. And, you know, the thing is that from my understanding, in a world where we're truly all connected to our inner power and our divinity and our own potentiality and multidimensionality, we make choices that come from alignment and support and community. And so at this point in time, right, we're all getting swept up in wanting to make the world change, but we have to constantly be checking, okay, am I willing to change? Because if every one of us isn't willing to make those changes on a deep level, well, then how are we ever going to create that world, that beautiful heart-centered 5D world, right? Because here's the thing, all possibilities exist, all potentialities exist, right? And while I may love you, if you've decided that it's in your soul mission to go and serve from the other side, why is it for me to say that's wrong for you? Why is it for me to demand that you stay here in physicality? Because I'm going to tell you all right now, if I decide my time is done and any of you try demanding that I stay down here when I'm ready to go back to source, we're going to have words and I'm going to haunt you through fucking all the dimensions.
All right, now I know that somebody said it kind of makes sense. I'm going to give you an analogy, and I think that that's going to be it. That's all I really want to share today. So I'm going to give you an analogy to help with the understanding a little bit. Let's say you live in New York, right? And New York and the whole country is operating on an analog network. You've got your cell phone and it's analog and you're happy, right? You love your analog phone. You've got a really cool cover faceplate for it and you love your analog phone. You're like, I love my analog phone. And then you hear that New York is about to roll out a new digital network and analog phones aren't going to work anymore. But you know that Los Angeles is keeping the analog network. So you basically move from New York to LA.
Now, do you want your family members demanding that you stay in New York and upgrade when you don't want to?
That's essentially what is happening on the planet right now.
That's exactly what's happening.
Like in terms of what's happening with this, Corona time, it's literally the people that are leaving the planet at the moment have just said, I'm not ready to be done with a three-dimensional space-time physicality.
I'm going to go over here and live in this dimension because the other dimension that they're choosing to go to is just as real as Los Angeles.
So
we just have to remember that.
I'm done here and I'm going to go and move to this other city because it still supports analog and I love my analog for now. I love it. I love the tastes, the sounds. I love the pleasures of analog world. It's a pleasurable world for me. So I'm going to stay in analog town. Cool. But because this town is upgrading its networks. It's becoming a digital town. If you want to use the analog network, you can't stay here.
It's right. Like the same. Just if you look at, would you take your first grade child and insist that they go into 8th grade and learn how to do the 8th grade algebra, and their parentheses equations, freaking things? Please excuse my dear anxiety. The whole order of operations. Like you're not going to ask a first grader to do 8th grade math and in demand. Huh?
Pandas.
Yeah. The order of operations. Oh my God. You're not going to demand that, right? And so insisting that somebody stays here and forces themselves to go through the shifts and the evolutions that maybe they're not ready for yet. Because that's the thing, you guys, our souls, we're all different ages. We've had all different experiences. Some of us have lived tons of incarnations in different dimensions, on different planets, in different lifetimes. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. That's the beauty of I get to have my experience and you get to have your experience. Now, of course, I want to serve and honor and hold space and teach and guide and be a way shower for anybody who is ready for that. That's what, both of us are here to do. But if you're not ready for that, I'm also going to still love you and let you have that experience. And if we're not going to be in the same dimension anymore where we get to see each other, that's okay too.
Final thing.
Because I'll just multidimensional travel and come see you when I want to.
Final thing, friends. Please, please, please. Let's stop bickering about who started this. Let's stop bickering about
red or blue party.
who's controlling it. Let's stop bickering about
DT, BG.
Who's to gain from it. Let's stop focusing on all of that. Now, I'm not talking about bypassing here.
No.
I'm saying we acknowledge that there are forces at play here. We acknowledge...
Inform yourselves.
We acknowledge that the forces at play have their own agendas.
Own agendas.
That is all we need to understand.
And their agenda doesn't align with your agenda, I promise you.
Literally, all we need to understand is that there are forces at play here, multiple forces at play, and they all have their own agenda. Now, if we're not focusing on that, who caused it, who's to gain from it, what's driving it, if we're not focusing on that, what are we focusing on? How about we start focusing on the world that we want to create?
And your own power and sovereignty. right? Like imagine if all of the energy that got poured into judging people who may have opposite beliefs or arguing about whether we should or shouldn't be in quarantine and on lockdown. Like that's not, while people are arguing with not their real enemy, the real people that don't have your best interest at heart are doing lots of things behind the scenes. So like, yeah, we're not going to talk a whole lot about it because that's not what this is about, but I highly suggest all of you just look. Any advice I would give you is question anything that the mainstream narrative is being fed, because that's not in your own best interest, right? Don't just take information at face value, even when it comes from us. Go and sit with it, see how it feels in your body, dig into it, explore it, dive deeply, right? Watch things with the intention of being shown the truth.
Can we finish this by sharing a guided visualization with you guys? Would that be all right? I would like to do that. I would really like to do that for you, because you know we're talking about moving away from the whole concept of looking at who's to blame and who started it and all of that shit, and
looking
not
at what to
focusing
be
on
afraid
that.
of, yeah.
and talking about focusing on the new world. Would it be all right if I shared a visualization with you guys? And if it would be okay, just say yes. Like just throw up a very quick yes, and then we'll take like 5 minutes.
YES. Yay,
Yeah,
Beth.
Beth, totally.
Hi, Trisha. So you sneak in.
I couldn't have imagined that you would have survived the journey through ALM with us if you weren't ready for this.
Right.
All right, Xana's yes. Very cool.
Yes.
Rebecca is yes. Karen is yes. All right.
Yeah, exactly, Barb. Do your own research and educate yourself and discern. Discernment. Woo! Call in that discernment, y'all. You have it in here. Call upon it.
Stephanie is yes. All right, guys, girls, friends, Romans, countrymen. Close your eyes. Wherever you are right now, just close your eyes. Close your eyes and just relax and just start to focus on your breath. Now, I don't want to see any more typing in the chat because your eyes are closed, and unless you can type with osmosis. So now we're just focusing on our breath.
Thought to text.
There's no such thing yet.
It's coming.
Breathe in nice and deep. Relax. Exhale just as deeply, nice and long. Allow yourself to shift comfortably into a parasympathetic state. Allowing yourself to relax and just sink into, you're feeling yourself becoming heavy. You're getting heavier on the seat, the ground, the earth, whatever you're sitting or lying on right now. Breathe in, one more, nice and deep, all the way in. Fill yourself up with oxygen. Allow it to get to the point where it turns and then starts to come back out. Now, I want you to imagine in your mind's eye, visualize that you've just sat up and you're on the earth and you're surrounded by beautiful oak trees. There's these beautiful big oak trees stretching their branches out. Some are reaching down and bending to touch the ground, and it's just a beautiful grove of oak trees all around you, and there's moss and lichen growing in amongst you, a little bit of grass, and you're sitting comfortably in this spot. You're in this space, and this is your beautiful space. Now, as you stand up and you take a step, you notice that you step on the grass itself comes alive with vibration. The grass itself starts to vibrate. It starts to almost sing. You can hear the pleasure in the grass for the physical contact and the interaction with you. And the grass vibrates, and its vibration creates an illumination within the grass, and the grass itself starts to glow as you step upon it. And you walk over to one of the oak trees, and then you find yourself in amongst the big gnarly roots of one of the oaks, and you find a nice little nook, and you sit down in amongst the oak. And you have a question on your mind right now. There's a question that you're seeking an answer to, and you don't know the answer, and you're seeking guidance. And you've always typically done a Google search. This is a world where Google no longer exists. How do you find the answer? So you sit down and you focus on your breath. You place your hands on your heart and you start to breathe. You connect with your breath, and in that moment, you feel the roots of the oak tree start to shift around you. They start to cradle you like a giant palm of somebody's hand holding you. And all of a sudden you feel the roots start vibrating with life, with energy. And they pass the knowledge and the wisdom held within this tree, this beautiful oak mother, passes its knowledge and its wisdom into you through your spine, and it comes down through your spinal column, and it starts permeating your nervous system, and it filters through into every single cell in your body. And it happens in a way that is just intuitive but unbelievable. It's almost beyond the scope of anything you can imagine, but the knowledge, the wisdom, the answers that you're seeking right now have been passed to you by this beautiful oak tree, sharing the wisdom through its root system into your nervous system. You are one with the oak mother momentarily. And when you've received the answer, you fill yourself with a deep breath with so much gratitude, and that gratitude overflows out of your body into your etheric energy field and permeates back into the tree. And you've now given the tree an exchange of energy. It's given you your answer, and you've given it your gratitude. And now the roots subside and they pass back to how they were, and you stand up and you walk back onto the grassy patch in the middle of the grove where you started, and you lay down, close your eyes, start to breathe consciously, focusing on your breath. And now at the end of the journey, you start to realize you're sitting or lying in your room and you're watching a live feed on Facebook. And when you feel called to do so, you start to wiggle your fingers and your toes, you take a couple of deep breaths, and you come back to the room and you open your eyes. And here you are with us, with Chris and Linz. Now I share that with you because that, my friends, is the world that we are moving into. That's what this dimensional shift will bring for us. What you've just accessed is a very brief insight into the living library of this planet. And I feel that as I say it. I feel such a swelling in my heart when I say that you've just accessed very briefly the tip of the iceberg of what the living library of this planet can do, what it is capable of. You want to gain knowledge of how to create a new world, you go and curl up with the oaks, and they will share their wisdom with you.
And just allow yourself to have the process of being able to hold that kind of energy, because that is what it, for us to be able to live the external world of what we connect to in meditation, it's going to take some shifts and some integration and some purging and some evolution and some upgrades. So allow yourself the process and have compassion for yourselves during it.
And so now is the time to work with that visually in here, because it will create out here. This is what has been given to us. We are the key. The living library needs us to interpret it. We are an integral part of it, but we cannot access it from a place of fear. We cannot access it by force.
Right.
We can't bulldoze it down to access it. We
can't force it, control it.
We can't crack it open. We can't hack into it. We can't split it open with axes. We have to find it within ourselves as the key that fits that lock exactly and unlocks the library.
And if you find yourself getting caught up in anything, no matter what it is, just emotions or density or narratives or stories about death, just asking yourself why, like getting curious about the things that you're feeling and allowing yourself to witness them and release them and write new stories about what everything means. You get to choose what everything means to you.
Don't be afraid. There's no need to be afraid. There's nothing that needs to be feared. One of several things will happen as we progress forward, for you personally as well as for the world. But the fact of the matter is, you're on this train now.
And the only guarantee in life is actually death. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. And that's even becoming questionable, though, because I believe that we are unlocking our capacity to live for as many years as we want.
You're on this train now, and there is only one path that makes it feel okay, and that's the path of surrender.
Surrender.
The path of lightness. You know, we tread softly from here. No more anger, no more hatred, no more accusations, no more blame. Just be very mindful of the things that you consume, the food that you consume. Make sure it's live, high vibrational food. But then, what are you consuming on social media? What are
Information,
you reading?
movies, data.
What are you watching?
Who are you listening to?
Now is the time to be discerning. Like Barb said earlier, discernment is the order of the day. Everything you bring into your field needs to match the worthiness of what you've just experienced in that living library.
Every piece of content or movie or everything has an agenda, you all. Everything. And I can promise you that anything that's being created on a mass-produced scale, like media, news, any of that stuff, does not have your highest agenda in mind. Just like we want natural organic food, look for people that are putting out natural organic messages and content, because that's going to be the content and the information that is in line with your highest timeline agenda.
We're all artisans. Now's the time to embrace that.
Friends, if we can serve you in any way, reach out.
Thank you so much for joining with us today. Have a beautiful, blessed evening, day, morning, wherever you are in the world.
Share this if you feel called. Invite a friend to watch it. It's public. Put it out there if you feel like someone can benefit from it.
And we will see you all very soon.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.